It's MattMatt. Hello, mate.
How are we doing?
Really good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. You have to excuse the fact that we just green screen, but every time I put a fake background on, it looked like I was putting a fake background on. So
no, it doesn't matter, mate. It really doesn't matter. Well, the one thing I've learned during this, it really doesn't matter what the screen is as long as the dialogue is good. So no pressure or anything.
No, definitely not.
Now, Matt, the reason I've invited you on is because, I mean, for people who don't know you, explain what it is you do, because I mean, there are many, I found you through TikTok. So explain what it is that you do on TikTok for the people, what are people listening?
Well, I am a complete and utter TikTwonk. I joined TikTok as many people did when we all got locked down. And it was Darth Unicorn was the guilty party. I came onto TikTok and I saw one of his videos first, and he was talking about how easy it was to make videos and talk about whatever subject you wanted. And really quickly, I got embroiled into political debate. I met some great characters on TikTok, and for a good 18 months, all I did was political commentary. Because I'm not a fan of Westminster at all. So I'm not left, I'm not right. I'm non-political. I think the whole thing's a farce. So I was able to come at a lot of different subjects from both sides. And then one day, totally out of the blue, I saw the video that totally changed my life. And it was a young 10-year-old girl in the middle of bombed out Gaza. And she basically said, what am I supposed to do? I'm 10 years old. What am I supposed to do? And it broke my heart, because all I could think of was, you're not supposed to do anything, love. You're supposed to be a 10-year-old girl. You're supposed to be being a kid.
I'm always sick. I don't know. I can't do anything. See all of this. What do you expect me to do? Fix it? I'm only 10. I can't even do anything this morning. I just want to be a doctor or anything to help my people, but I can't. I'm just a kid. I don't even know what to do. I get scared, but not really that much. I do anything for my people, but I don't know what to do. I'm just 10. I'm just 10. All of this, when I see it, I literally cry every day, saying to myself, why do we deserve this? What did we do to this? My family said they just hate us. They just don't like us because we are Muslims. Why does Muslims act for you like that? We're just kids. You see all of the kids around me? They're just kids. Why wouldn't you just send a missile to them and kill them? It's not fair. It's not fair.
Matt, I think I remember that video, you know. I think I remember the exact video you're talking about. It tugs at my heartstrings too. I remember.
And the thing for me was, a lot of then memories came back, because I used to work in Haifa. I used to work on the cruise ships, and we visited Haifa 3 times a week. We worked out of Cyprus, and I was on there and visited Haifa 3 times a week. And there was one occasion when I was in Haifa, and there was a Hamas bomb blast on a bus in the market square. I was 22 years old, and all it meant to me then was, oh bollocks, this is going to cause mayhem with work.
Mm-hmm.
We went back on the ship and we weren't allowed back into Haifa for about a month. But when I saw this video, all these memories came back, and I was like, why did I never do anything about it then? So I started to comment on this video, and some of the comments were well received by pro-Palestinians. A lot of them were met with quite incredible abuse from pro-Zionists. And that is how my TikTok life as a pro-Palestinian creator really took off. And I've had to do a hell of a lot of learning. I really have. I'm lucky that my job takes me all over the country, so I spend a lot of time listening to audiobooks. And I'm halfway through the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. And by God, that's a heavy duty listen, let alone what it must be like for a read.
Imagine.
So yeah, I'm a TikToker. I am the eternal tick-twonk. My dad never swore. That was his word. A twonk. It was halfway between a twit and a plonker.
Yeah.
So that was it. So, which is why I've always opened my videos with, you know, good morning tick-twonks or good afternoon tick-twonks, because I think we all need to be a bit crazy to do what we do.
Well, I certainly fit that profile, I'm sure. You've been having problems with TikTok. You keep losing your account, don't you? How many accounts? How many accounts have you burnt through now?
This is number 13. We're now on TikTok Olive. I started off, and they were numerical. So I started off on TikTok as MattMatt 777 because 666 had already been taken by a guy with horns. So, you know, I started off as MattMatt, and then for some reason I just thought it was easier if I had a color, and then I could just keep changing the color of my profile picture, and I could just keep changing, because it was blatantly obvious that I was going to lose accounts on a regular basis.
Why is that? Why are you losing the accounts? That's the thing. I want to. Why are you losing the accounts? Because
I get reported on a regular basis for bullying and harassment, because I don't let people go. If somebody makes a stupid comment on one of my videos, they're going down. And if they want to pick a fight with me in the comment section, whether it's with me or the people who follow me, they know full well that they're going down. And that's it. We don't hold any punches. We don't hold back. You know, if somebody comes into the comment section, as I said earlier on this week on a video, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck and behaves like a duck, it's getting called a duck. And some people don't like that. So I get reported for bullying and harassment. I've had a lot of attacks because I've been posting videos with about Shireen's funeral and about the violence that escalated.
Just explain quickly who Shireen is.
Okay, Shireen was a journalist for Al Jazeera, and she lost her life.
Shireen Abu Akleh, isn't it?
Yes, sorry, Shireen Abu Akleh. She lost her life while covering the IDF moving into, well, let's just say the IDF were in the West Bank, and she was caught in what they are calling Palestinian crossfire. The Palestinians say it was the IDF. The investigations are still going. It's very, very strongly believed that she lost her life to an IDF sniper.
We made ourselves clear to the army and the passers-by, indicating that we are the press. Then within seconds there was the first shot. I told them that we are being targeted, we are being shot at. I turned and found Shireen on the ground. I found Shatha shielding herself by a tree and screaming. I turned and found Shireen on the ground in the first few seconds with the shooting, and we were telling each other that we were being shot at. The shooting continued for more than 3 minutes on the teams that were there.
هذه المسيرة هي المسيرة 25 إحياء لذكرى النكبة، فيما يحتفل الإسرائيليون في ذكرى تأسيس إسرائيل، يحيي الفلسطينيون ذكرى نكبتهم.
We were going to film the Israeli army operation, and suddenly they shot us without asking us to leave or stop filming. The first bullet hit me, and the second bullet hit Shireen. They killed her in cold blood because they are killers and specialize in killing only Palestinian people.
So they claimed that some Palestinian militants were there.
We had no resistance, and there was no Palestinian military resistance at all at the scene.
killing journalists, shooting the messenger, is equivalent to a war crime. So we need to know what has happened. The world needs to know what has happened.
She was well dressed in her press gear. She was very easily identifiable, but she lost her life anyway. And she was an American Palestinian journalist. And at her funeral, the IDF came in, as we would say in this country, well tooled up. And they basically turned her funeral into a riot.
The pictures sparked international condemnation. A funeral procession reduced to fear and panic as Israeli security forces kicked and beat pallbearers with batons. And now newly released pictures from the hospital's cameras show how the police acted. A stun grenade is fired towards the hospital, famous for its maternity ward. A pregnant woman about to give birth had to be bundled in, say the staff. We were there at the time when mourners rushed for cover.
Let the baby through!
Patients and staff ran into the building. I saw at least one person wounded. And now Shireen Abu Akleh's family say they were threatened while they tried to grieve.
I honestly was very afraid. I had to run and I had to hide in the hospital because they started throwing stun grenades, and one of them actually threatened to beat me if I don't move out of the way.
Today at the hospital, the Vatican's envoy in Jerusalem condemned the police.
And the first article of this fundamental agreement states that the State of Israel upholds and observes the human right of freedom of religion, which in this case has been brutally violated.
Shireen Abu Akleh was killed last week, shot in the head as she covered an Israeli army raid. She was a veteran correspondent, known to millions, and she was a Palestinian Christian. Her body eventually left St. Joseph's. The East Jerusalem hospital is famous for its maternity ward, known for its care for Muslim, Jewish and Christian mothers alike. The staff call it a place of healing. But all that felt under threat as Israeli security forces also stormed into the building on Friday, as we discovered when we got pushed back.
Well, this is now a hospital under siege.
The force has defended its actions. It has said 300 rioters arrived at the hospital, but this claim has been discredited. It says some people threw stones and it was protecting the funeral plans agreed by the family, but the family itself disputes this. And it was the healers that ended up with wounds. This neonatal intensive care doctor told me how he was burned by a stun grenade.
So one of them was very close to my feet and exploded, and it caused burns on my feet.
A review's already been announced into the funeral's policing, but the security force declined to respond to questions about the church leaders' statements. It may do little to lower the temperature in a region that has once again been in the grip of violence. Tom Bateman, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Because of the footage that was then included in a lot of my videos were then reported and taken down for the content, basically, because it was violent.
Violence.
Yeah. So I was the one who paid. So yeah, I go through accounts like most people go through socks.
Now the thing is, Matt, you're not showing anything on TikTok, right? With that video of the, you're not showing anything that Al Jazeera won't show on their blue tick TikTok, or you know, I was going to mention an American channel then, but there's no way that they would show that event, is there? Let's face it. But you know, other channels with a blue tick like Al Jazeera will show that footage and they won't have their video taken down. So why are your videos taken down? Now, I've listened to your content and there's no content that there's nothing, you don't swear like you say, and you're as respectful as possible. I can imagine with people, although like you say, when you do get idiots come into your comment section and try and stir up trouble, it's what I want to ask is this targeted by a bunch of people, and is it the same people who are appearing in your comment sections over and over again? And are they people? Who are these people who are reporting you and getting your accounts and your voice shut down? Are they people, or are they, you know, accounts that are being run in a basement in Tel Aviv somewhere? This is what I really want to get at.
Okay, a combination of both, Gordon, most definitely. You can identify either very, very quickly. There are a number of TikTok creators that are very, very pro-Zionist, and they show themselves in their videos, and they personally attack me, you know, so I know who they are. So I know that they are people. But these people off TikTok have organized WhatsApp groups and Discord servers where they basically talk about creators that they do not want to see on TikTok, and they organize mass attacks. And I've even had people that have admitted it in the comment section. Last night, I had a guy, I know who he is. He's a chap from Wales, North Wales. And he openly admitted that his only purpose now is to take down my content. But that's because he's been made to look a fool in a number of my videos, because what he says is very, very foolish. Now, I could be the bigger man and take a step back and just ignore him. But that's not who I am. I'm a loudmouth Yorkshireman who's not afraid, to open his mouth and shoot somebody that's verbally trying to take him down. Then there's the other side of the things. There is a group controlled by the IDF who work out of, as you say, a basement in Tel Aviv, and they just control bots. So they sort of throw these stock questions at you.
Yeah, this is, by the way, this is not me saying just the Israelis do it. We do it in the UK. There's something called the 77th Brigade up in there in the north of England. We've got our own bot farms. Every country in the world has their own bot farm. So please carry on, Matt. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to create a false narrative that
not at all.
We're as white as snow. I say we. I mean, it's not you and I. We don't control it. We're Joe Nobody on TikTok. But there are government offices controlled by the Israelis that their sole purpose is to try and whitewash social media with Israel Zionist content. So they want anybody who questions Israel's policies, Israel's methodologies, to be taken down.
Well, this is people then, isn't it, that their sole job is to warp reality for people. Their sole job is to shut down speech on certain things and keep certain things quiet to get people's reality to change. Because the reality is at the moment that we're seeing incredible amounts of violence come out of Israel. And I mean, just the sheer numbers alone should tell a story. And I don't need to go. I'm very outspoken on TikTok as well about what's happening in Israel. And I cover lots of other stuff as well, like, I cover, geopolitics almost, and don't concentrate on one area of the world. But whenever I've had, I'm at the point now with I mean, you're on 13 accounts. I'm still on my first, right?
Oh, well done.
But I'm at the stage now where when I go to my profile, below my profile, it says account warning in red.
Yeah.
So one more video gets taken down, I'm banned, aren't I? Completely.
It can change, because I'm led to believe that if you left that account alone, so any videos that you've had reported that you've failed on appeal, if you've got those still grayed out and you delete them, I'm led to believe that if you leave that account alone for a number of weeks and there are no violations for a couple of weeks, it's almost like they wiped the slate clean.
Okay.
So I tend to start a new account when an old account gets actually banned. So not just videos taken down, but you get notification that your account has been deleted. It's been removed. So I will then start a new account. I currently have 4 live accounts, not because I want 4, but because I had MattMatt Orange was taken down and permanently deleted. Then upon appeal, we won it back. So I left it in case I wanted to use it for lives, or I wanted to use it in case another account got banned. The same happened with my Jade account. The same then happened over the weekend. We had MattMatt Gold, which had the highest number of followers that I've had literally since.
How many is that on that account?
I had about 3.5, I had about just over 3,000 followers on that account.
Okay.
When I first started, it was on about 7,000. But if I get an account to anywhere near 3,000, that's when the Zionist trolls really start attacking. That seems to be the number. So when I get to 3,000 followers, that's when I know Zionist trolls are going to start hitting that account, and I'm going to be in a lot of trouble because it's going to start getting mass reported. So yeah.
Okay.
So I've now got sort of 4 accounts that are running live, but there's only one that I use, and that's the MattMatt Olive. So that's the latest one, basically because I chose a green account so that I didn't have to change all of my profile pictures.
Picture and everything. Yeah, you just I understand. Yeah, and
but also
people can just your followers also, the people who follow you can see, oh right, okay, that's his new one then.
Yeah, it's the same picture. We just changed the shade very slightly, and we just changed the name very slightly, and you know, we just go again.
But most of your videos, Matt, right? I've seen you're not showing anything. You're just talking to the camera. That's pretty much all you're doing, and you're responding to comments, and you're doing it in a respectful way. You're not calling people out as fools or you know, or shouting names at them or anything like that. You shouldn't be having these videos banned. Now I'm in a situation where I've done about 70 or 80 videos, I suppose, maybe 100 videos on TikTok. And they've been really quite successful. Some of them have got a lot of views. So I'm in a position now where the problem I had on YouTube and everywhere else pretty much is, to a certain degree, you've got freedom of speech, but you haven't got freedom of reach. In that my YouTube channel has just been, they don't even show my YouTube videos to my own subscribers who click the bell and everything now. You know, my analytics, if I show people my analytics, it's like 90% of my videos are my own subscribers. Now I'm not that crap. People like my stuff. They just, you know, YouTube just won't show it to anybody. And, you know, they've clamped down on censorship in this country, and people like me have been caught up in the net, so to speak, and I dare say targeted in some ways. But the shutting down of speech like this is really worrying, because I've done about 100 videos on TikTok, and I've never really had a problem on YouTube with any of my videos getting taken down, because I'm very careful what I say, very careful. But on TikTok, about 30% of my videos are taken down, about 30%, and it's incredible. And now of those 30 videos that were taken down, about 25 of them, they were overturned on appeal. The appeal was like, yeah, you haven't said anything wrong there, we reinstated you. And on 2 videos they said, yeah, that's a violation of rules. Now I still don't know why it was a violation of rules. Maybe it was, okay, but 2 videos they've said, no, that's naughty. Right. And now that isn't too bad. 2 violations in 8 months or whatever it is. But there's also another 3 videos where they said I broke the rules, and they will not even look at the appeal. I've asked them to appeal, and they come back with, to appeal, you press this button. I'm like, no, I have pressed the button. You just haven't appealed. And then it's like, what is your account? I'm like, well, I'm talking to you through the account. Why don't you know what account is, what my account is? And it's quite apparent that either I'm talking to a machine, or I'm talking to somebody who's speaking very broken English in China somewhere, who doesn't quite understand. And I can't get through to them. And as a result of this, I've got several violations that I shouldn't have. Now, if it's so, the problem with TikTok is obviously, of course, they have to moderate en masse. Now, yeah, I understand this. I understand they have to moderate en masse, and I understand it must be a nightmare, especially at the rate they are growing. They are taking over the planet right now, and they've got this new music thing coming out, the music app version of TikTok, where they're going to give away 100% of the revenue to creators, and it's fantastic. It's brilliant. So instead of having a freedom of reach problem, I've not got that now. I can reach great. They're not silent, but I've got the freedom of speech problem now. Now I've got to be ultra cautious about what I say. And even when I say nothing wrong, I'm still going to get videos taken down. And this is the problem that you've got as well. Talking to them and getting any sort of response from them, it's a nightmare, isn't it?
It's, for me, it's gotten to the point where I don't even bother now.
Me neither. It's like talking to a brick wall. It's insane.
Yeah. That's why I'm perfectly happy just to regenerate a new account, give it a new color, let people know that I've got a new account. And luckily, because of the nature of my content, I can hit 1,000 followers. We did it this time on the Olive account. We hit over 1,000 followers in just over 48 hours. Right. So just over 2 days. A lot of the followers, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks, we'll get that up to 2, maybe 3,000. And then it'll
hit the same problem again, aren't you? You're going to get the account taken down again. It's going.
But it doesn't. That doesn't stop me making content.
No, I'm not saying it should stop you. What I'm saying is it's fucking unfair.
Oh, like, absolutely.
Why is it that some people are allowed to speak and other people aren't? Yeah. This is, if you shut down, if you've got a population of people, right, who, I'm not going to talk in a left and right sense here. I'm just going to talk one extreme on one end of the spectrum and one to the other. If you get them all to put their opinion in, you're going to come out in, you know, in somewhere along the right direction, because while no one person in the country will have the answer on any particular subject, we all would get the right answer, or there or thereabouts, or at least know which direction to go in morally, etc., etc. If you shut down speech from one end to the other, you can warp that compass point in any direction you want. You are literally creating a different reality to move toward whatever agenda power wants, and that is literally 1984. And we need to have somebody stand up and go, this isn't wrong, and this is wrong. People need to be able to speak, otherwise we're going to go down the road, and we're so far down that road now, it's worrying, to fascism. And we're not far off. There was a speech yesterday from Marby Black in Parliament. It was a great speech. Go and watch it if you haven't. She's a politician from Scotland. And we're talking about, if we don't talk about the F word soon, we might be past the point of no return. Fascism doesn't come in overnight. It doesn't come in under the boot of a jackboot. It comes in slowly over a period of time through corrupt officials who are in power, who rather than own up to their own mistakes and pay for them, would rather cover them up and change policy to make sure they can't get caught doing the shit that they're doing.
Marby Black. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now, for a party that prides itself on the economy, the Tories have a shocking record of running it. Our economy has the slowest growth in the G7. We have got greater regional inequality than almost any other developed nation. Food banks now do the job of government in providing for families that are more often than not in work. Government could start solving this crisis by providing solutions like closing tax avoidance loopholes or creating a windfall tax for energy companies. But instead, we get endless bills paying lip service to a manufactured culture war. The priority isn't the economy, it seems to be things like protecting freedom of speech, and yet The Tories are the ones that have banned schools in England from using sources that are not overtly pro-capitalist. Yeah. They're cracking down on freedom of assembly and protest. They're privatising Channel 4 when the Culture Secretary didn't even know that Channel 4 receives no public money. So the argument isn't financial. And as the member for Rhondda touched upon earlier on, when we consider that the Culture Secretary was a key focus of a Channel 4 documentary once about the influence that Christian fundamentalism has over UK politics, it becomes even more concerning that this decision is political and it's personal, it is not professional. But most terrifying of all, Madam Deputy, is that this government literally want to get rid of the Human Rights Act. And that begs the question, for who do they think rights have gone too far? Do you know how scary it is to sit at home and wonder if it's you? Is it your rights that are up for grabs? We've witnessed Windrush. Our economic strategy is to open our doors to the rest of the world when we need their hard work and then chuck them out 50 years later without a word's notice. We tell our own citizens that their safety can't be guaranteed in Rwanda, but we're perfectly happy to ship asylum seekers, people fleeing war and persecution, over to Rwanda as though they're cattle to be dealt with by someone else. And despite knowing that this plan costs more than it will ever save, this is just little England elites drunk on the memory of a British Empire that no longer exists. We have the lowest pensions in Europe, the lowest sick pay. We pretend minimum wage is a living wage when it's not. We miss our own economic targets time and time again. We're happy to break international law. We are turning into a country where words hold no value. And over the last 12 years, I fear we are sleepwalking closer and closer to the F word. And I know everyone is scared to say it for fear of sounding over the top or being accused of going too far. But I say this with all sincerity. When I say the F word, I'm talking about fascism. Fascism wrapped in red, white and blue. And you may mock, and you may disagree, but fascism does not come in with intentional evil plans or the introduction of leather jackboots. It doesn't happen like that. It happens subtly. It happens when we see no, I've heard enough. It happens when we see that governments making decisions based on self-preservation, based on cronyism, based on anything that will keep them in power. We see the concentration of power whilst avoiding any of the scrutiny or responsibility that comes with that power. It arrives under the guise of respectability and pride that will then be refused to anyone who is deemed different. It arrives through the othering of people, the normalisation of human cruelty. Now, I don't know how far down that road we are, Madam Deputy Speaker. Time will tell. But the things we do in the name of economic growth, the warning signs are there for everyone else to see, whether they admit it or not.
That's how fascism comes in. Now, you tell me, Matt, does that sound like anything the environment that we're in right now?
But isn't that what we've had, literally, since we've had media news outlets?
Yeah.
They control, they don't, I mean, we could end up sounding very, very quickly like we've fallen down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories.
No,
but
we're not for sure. People know this now.
Yeah, news outlets they're businesses. And those businesses have to make money, and that money's got to come from somewhere. And that money comes from advertising, or it comes from sponsors, or it comes from a state-funded background. So that news outlet has to be able to make this revenue. And they do that by telling people a controlled version of the news in accordance with where their money is coming from. You look at the news outlet. I know that Russia is one of your very big hot topics at the moment, and the war with Ukraine. But Russians do not know what is happening in Ukraine because of the Russian-led media output. because they get a totally different story.
Right.
You know as well as I do that if you watch, when the election was going on in the States, I used to watch CNN on one screen and Fox News on the other, and how they could cover exactly the same story and come up with totally different narratives was incredible.
Yeah.
But that is just another example, and TikTok is exactly the same. But for some reason, they are definitely falling on the side of Zionists when it comes to the conflict. I hate calling it a conflict. When it comes to the situation of the occupation of Palestine, they definitely fall on the side of Zionist news, and they try to silence the pro-Palestinian creators. Why? I don't know, because I do know that it's not all controlled in China anymore. There are companies who buy the appeals, and these appeals are processed. There was an article on the BBC News a little while ago about a woman in Wales who'd been working for this for a third-party company processing TikTok appeals. And she ended up having to leave due to mental health issues because of some of the videos that she'd been watching were incredibly upsetting. So they are now outsourcing the appeals process. Now, are these people trained to be able to make an impartial decision, or are they literally just watching the videos and going, oh, I don't like that, and that's how you lose it?
And who's funding these companies that are doing these appeals?
Exactly. So none of it is then, you know, this thing that is supposed to be controlling the narrative, who's controlling the controller?
Yeah.
And who's paying?
I've just put this into Google. This is the first result that come up. Who owns UK media share? According to 2021 report from the Media Reform Coalition, 90% of the UK-wide print media is owned and controlled by just 3 companies. 90% of everything you read with regards to the news is owned by 3 companies. That is Reach PLC, formerly Trinity Mirror, News UK, and DMG Media. The figure was up from 83% in 2019. Now, I mean, do I need to go through the worrying signs of fascism again and you know, control media?
Not for me, but by all means.
You know, I've made this point over and over on my channel over the last few years. You know, I think in America it's even worse. You know, Bill Clinton passed through and it was always a Democrat that does these horrible things, by the way. You people over in America who say that the Republicans are the worst, I just look at them and think, no. The Democrats are worse because the Democrats are the wolves in sheep clothing. You know, the Democrats are the ones that come with a smile, and they're the ones who actually do all the worst stuff, like, you know, make George Bush's tax cuts, which they were outraged. Obama rubber stamped them, and you know, the same thing happened with Biden. He's just rubber stamped Trump's tax cuts. The Democrats said, "Oh, this is a massive upwards transfer of wealth. This is terrible." Yeah, you come in and rubber stamped them as soon as you get in power. Bill Clinton, with the Telecommunications Act, basically made it so you had multiple outlets, like dozens and dozens of outlets, and you could get your media from lots of different places. And sort of when you're getting lots of different views, the populace sort of gets the right idea of what is happening. When you've only got 2 views in the end, and they're literally just, should we bomb Syria with 1,000 bombs or should we bomb them with 1,000,000 bombs? You know, well, how about you don't bomb Syria at all? You know, that doesn't even get through to the populace. And it is mind control of the masses. And for people like you and I, it's for people like you and I, and for the person who's, you know, had mental problems because of watching these videos and watching how fucked up the world is and how dishonestly it's being reported. It's psychological torture is what it is. I've had massive problems, you know, mentally, just trying to cope with the information that has reached my eyes and ears over the last 5 years by trying to figure out what's wrong. And Well, I mean, you did a video the other day about a friend who committed suicide. There are people who this is affecting. I met somebody. I won't go too much into it for privacy reasons, but I met somebody whose daughter committed suicide, and the reason was because they ended up being an activist and got interested in how the world was and just couldn't cope with how terrible and it was and how much she was being lied to.
Yeah. The only difference between a democracy and a dictatorship is the people who live in the democracy actually think they get a choice in which moron runs the country. And the more you look into, I mean, you're so much more well-rounded on global politics than I could ever dream of being. But the more you look into it, yeah, it can become a brain fuck without a shadow of a doubt.
And the reason for that, Matt, is not because I'm better at analysing anything than you. You've got a job. This was my entire life for 5 years. I absorbed myself in it. You know, people who will remember me from the steel industry years ago, and I know a few of them do listen and send me a message every now and then, you know, they'll remember how I almost had a memory where once I got into it and I could memorize all the codes and everything like that. And I could memorize all the grades of steel, and I really immersed myself in it because I wanted to learn everything about it. And the same has been for the last 5 years. It's only because I've had the time to do it and immerse myself in it that I've been able to maybe figure, I don't have to concentrate on one thing like many people do. I've got a more rounded view. It's only because of the time. And the mental, and it takes a toll. It really does. Sorry, you were saying.
No. I totally agree with you. And I've had this. My wife will always know when my account is getting attacked because she can detect the change in me. And it's not that I go green and tear off my shirt and pretend I'm the Hulk, but she can tell that there's a change in my emotional state, and it's not. The majority of attacks that I get, I can brush off. I'll give you, for instance, I was out in Greece. I split my time between here and Kefalonia, which is where my mum lives. And I was out in Greece, and I was having a bit of a row with somebody on TikTok, and we were talking about the 82 children who lost their lives at the hands of the IDF in Palestine last year. Now, that's not me making up a number. That is a recognized number of children whose lives were taken. Some of them were shot, some were killed in the bombings, but that's how many children lost their lives. And people were throwing numbers around as if they were numbers. And I had a moment where I was just sort of sat there in the apartment on my own thinking, these aren't numbers. These are children. I have children. The thought that my child could go to a protest at school, standing up for what he believes in, and somebody could just come out and shoot him.
Yeah.
And I was suddenly like, whoa. And that totally mashed my head. And I did a video where I said, I've got to take a break. I need to walk away from this because half of the Yorkshire side of me says nothing will ever bring me down. And I will argue everything until I'm blue in the face and I've lost my voice. The bit that keeps me sane was saying, walk the fuck away, Matt. Walk away. And I did. I had to take a break from posting. 3, 4, 5 days, just so that I could stop this thing in my head that was saying, these are not numbers. These are children's lives. And people don't understand that. And there's some heartless bastards out there, God. There are really some of the comments, you know, going back to what we were talking about earlier on about Shireen's funeral, somebody just posted, and this is their kind of phrase, not mine.
All right, mate.
Well, the bitch wasn't a journalist. She was just spouting propaganda. How can anybody say that about somebody who's just lost a life?
Well, I mean, you know, I think Robert Peston is a propagandist. If he was shot in the head, I don't think I would be saying serves him right. I've had exactly what you were talking about then, about having to walk away. I've had exactly that happen to me in the last few weeks. I realized that, you see, one of the reasons why my channel has been restricted so much is not because of anything that I'm saying that's wrong, or anything that I'm saying that's lies, or any misinformation that I'm putting out there. And that's exactly the same as you. It's not because of anything that you're putting out there that's misinformation or lies or anything like that. You're backing everything up with evidence, and you can back everything you say up. And I know I can as well. And it's not that they've shut us up because of anything that we're doing wrong. They've shut us up, and they're deleting your accounts, and they're restricting my reach, and about to delete my TikTok account as well, because of everything that we're doing right, and all the truth that we're telling. And right now we're in a situation where the government and government entities who have lied to the populace all of their lives, okay. Now, I want people to remember that they've lied to you your entire life. If you're older than 25, they've lied to you. I mean, you can remember weapons of mass destruction. You can remember what happened to Gaddafi. You can remember, if you go back a little bit longer, you can remember what NATO did in Chechnya. So, you know, you can remember the Afghanistan war. You can remember all of these things. And when you remember all of these things, and then you listen to what how the news frames the situation at the moment, for instance, in Ukraine, you know that what they're doing is they're presenting to you a version of reality that is rubber stamped by the elite and the powerful. It's not what's true. It's not what's actually true, and it's not a well-rounded version of events. It's just bullshit propaganda, no different to what you said Putin was doing to Russians. It's no different. We're lying to our populace. The Americans, the Australians, the French, they're all lying. And I see it because that's my job. And it's been my job for the last 5 years to try and decide. I realized something broke in the media. They're all lying. But these people who have lied to us constantly and are presenting a version of reality right now that is warped, is saying they have to shut people like you and me up because of misinformation that is being put out there. It's not the misinformation they're trying to stop. Actually, in my opinion, over the last 5 years, the biggest purveyors of misinformation have been governments, not being Reddit or 4chan, but governments. Governments put it out. And now they're shutting up anybody who's telling the truth. So I've had the situation where I literally couldn't do anymore. I'm in a position where I'm thousands of pounds in debt, rent, you know, eviction notices, etc. And it's not because of anything I've done wrong that I'm in this position. It's because of what I've done right. And it's unfair, Matt. And it really affects you mentally, because this is not North Korea or Russia that I live in. It's Great Britain. You know?
But we've lived under this perception that we're any different to them, Gordon. You know, whether it comes to, we're no different to North Korea. We're no different to Russia. And, you know, we are spoon-fed the news, and we're told what is right and what is wrong. And that is why when I do a live, I always say to people, for God's sake, don't believe everything that you're told. Go and look.
These people have lied to you in your entire lives. They're lying. They're not telling the truth now all of a sudden, are they?
No, but that's the great thing about things like TikTok. You can go on and you can see TikTok lives, and you can see people firsthand videoing what is happening. There's no narrative. You know, they're not doing it because they're being paid by a governmental office to do it. They are there with the boots on the ground saying, this is what I am fucking seeing now. And it's up to you to choose whether you want to believe what I say or go home and listen to the news at 10 where they say everything's shiny and wonderful in the Middle East today.
Yeah.
But when you've got people like, you've got British politicians who, have you ever seen there's two documentaries by Al Jazeera on YouTube about the lobby? Yeah. You know, phenomenal.
For anybody who's listening to this, please go and watch The Lobby by Al Jazeera if you haven't already.
There's two versions. There's a
shocking.
UK version and an American version, and it basically shows you how they destroyed how they destroyed somebody's chance at becoming prime minister in this country. And you know, they
scam, mate.
Oh, you know, it was, but they literally, it's there step by step how they brought him down. They completely fabricated an event at an event and turned him into an anti-Semite, which is the biggest untruth ever. Well, no, it's not the biggest.
You know, we're talking about Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah,
he should be our prime minister. If anybody here in the UK thinks we still have a democracy, just look at that. Look at the lobby. Just start investigating. I'm privileged enough to call Chris Williamson a friend of mine.
Okay.
That man, wow, I hope they build a statue of him in Derby one day, because he's been such a servant to that city.
Yeah.
And you know, a real good socialist, and they destroyed him for something he didn't say.
Exactly. That's the thing. And this is one thing, just to bring it back to the whole TikTok narrative. That's one thing for me that winds me up, is when people say, I've said something. And I blatantly haven't, but then it rolls and two or three of the Zionist creators grab hold of exactly the same thing. And all of a sudden, people actually believe that I've said something. Now imagine that 1,000 times bigger, 10,000 times bigger, to the point where they were able to bring down somebody's electoral campaign.
Yeah.
And it's that simple.
Yeah.
Because
they labeled what I consider to be, certainly in my lifetime, the most anti-racist MP as a raving racist who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
They turned him into that. They destroyed Chris Williamson on the same basis for something that he didn't say. He didn't say we'd backed off too much. You know, we didn't say we've apologized too much for anti-Semitism. We haven't. He didn't say that. He said for an anti-racist party, we've backed off too much in the face of these smears. That's what he said, and that's not anti-Semitic. That's not saying we shouldn't apologise for anti-Semitism or anything they labelled him as. And I'm looking straight at the BBC, right at the BBC, how they have the gall right now to say that they have doing anything to do with educating or informing the British public, and is not state run over the last few years, honestly, is incredible. They've destroyed the lives of people, and they've done it because they're paying fealty to an apartheid state.
Yeah. Yeah. It's genuinely upsetting, and it comes back to the mental health thing. We can allow ourselves to get frustrated, and when I get frustrated, that's when I let fly on TikTok. And just to correct something that you said a little while ago, when you said that I don't use I'm not very abusive, or I don't use foul language in my TikToks. Oh, I can do, mate.
Okay, all right. I haven't seen it too much. That's all. I just haven't seen you swear too much.
One of the things, and I've been told a number of times, if I didn't swear as much and I didn't call people a "see you next Tuesday" as much, my videos would not be taken down.
Oh God, yes, of course you do. Yes, it's one of your it's my favourite word too. I'm sorry, of course, yeah.
But if I didn't do that, then I'm changing my narrative to fit in to what TikTok will allow.
Yeah.
What's the difference between that and a newsreader being told, this is what you need to read to the people tonight?
Yeah.
You know, it's who I am. I'm an airy-arse Yorkshireman with a big mouth, and I will say exactly what needs to be said. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not being paid by anybody, despite what people might claim that I'm an actor. I've been on a few episodes of Emmerdale Farm 28, 30 years ago, but that doesn't make me an actor.
Okay. Emmerdale Farm, wicked. Was that before they built the town, or was it in the studio?
I did one on each. I made the mistake. I used to work on the cruise ships, as I said earlier on. So I did some when I was sort of in my late teens to get me through theatre school. And I did some extra work. And then I got a phone call in between cruise ship contracts. Are you back in the country? Yes, I am. Oh, brilliant. I've got a day on Emmerdale for you. So I went to the studio like I did before, and I sort of rocked up there. He went, no, you're supposed to be in the New Village.
Oh, right.
And I was like, oh, where? But yeah, that seems like a whole different life ago. But people say that I'm an actor and I'm being paid to make these videos, and I'm not an actor. I'm a dog walker. I walk my dog on a morning. I hold my phone up to my face and I walk around the same woods making my videos. And you know, you can't earn a penny on TikTok until you've got 10,000 followers. I haven't had 10,000 followers for nearly 3 years.
But
so,
yeah,
you know,
and this is another way that you know, that the narrative gets changed, in that they went after WikiLeaks straight away by hitting them financially, you know, taking away their PayPal, etc. They're doing it right now with independent media. They're doing it right now with friends of mine in America who have worked for RT or work for outlets that are telling the truth, and they're taking their PayPal away. And you know, it's another way that people, truth tellers, are being hit. This is not them trying to go after people who are spreading misinformation. This is people who are telling you the truth. And that's why they're going out. And so the thing is, it's important that you keep doing these videos, because, for instance, you mentioned Shireen Abu Akleh.
Yeah.
She was shot in the face by well, I mean, there were journalists who were saying she was shot in the face by the IOF.
They know exactly where the bullets came from. They according to
Loki, who has been a real good source of information on Palestine, and doesn't sugarcoat things and back stuff up with evidence. I've never seen anything that he's retweeted that's wrong or anything like that. He said the bullet that killed her, the Palestinians have examined it, and it was made by a subsidiary in this country of Elbit Systems.
Yep.
So we are not just condoning this. I saw the Conservative Party the other day say, no, we can't call it an apartheid because apartheid is a legal term and there's no legal framework in international law. It's like you're using those things whenever you want to, and whenever you don't want to, you're ignoring them. For instance, you're going to ship Julian Assange off now, ignoring the Article 4 of the US-UK extradition treaty, while saying, oh, you can't call it an apartheid in Israel because there's no international law. Are you going to follow it or not? You know, but it's important you do these videos, because she was, like I say, she was shot in the face. I've seen many interviews with people who were there with her, who was saying this is what happened. And when we went to try and get her body, they shot at us as well. I think her cameraman was hit, was he not?
I think it was a cameraman, or at least there was definitely another journalist who was hit while trying to attend to her body.
So, and they all testify it was the IOF that did it. I call them the Israeli occupation force, because actually that's more descriptive. I don't call the US spending 800 billion on their military every year, their defense budget. That's ridiculous. It doesn't go on defense. It actually goes on all your bases abroad. That's literally an offensive budget. It's a war chest. That's what I call it. So the IOF, they were shooting at the journalists, according to the what they testified. Now, it's important that you get this out, because, and you tell the truth about this, and it's important you tell, you know, I've seen your video about them, that the IOF then raided the hospital where she was taken to. You've already mentioned that they battered the crap out of the people holding her coffin, just trying to. Has anybody asked Israel what the hell they were doing an operation in the West Bank in the first place?
Well, yeah, but then that's when they opened the can of worms. Why were America performing operations in Pakistan? You know, we've got this whole thing that,
but when Russia do it in Ukraine, then we point that out, mate.
You know this, and I know this, but America have set a precedent now because they were going after bin Laden. They were able to go into Pakistan completely uninvited by the Pakistani authorities. They were able to go in there and assassinate somebody. They had no intention of arresting him.
No.
As soon as he was identified, it was a double tap to the dome. You know, it was an assassination. Now, whether that's right or wrong, and whether the guy deserved it or not, they've now set a precedent.
He was paid by them 20, 30 years before. Of
course he was. They
were
created
him with the Mujahideen.
But Israel created Hamas. You know, it's now widely accepted that Israel created Hamas. They funded Hamas to bring down the Palestinian Authority.
Yeah.
As soon as Hamas was then big enough and loud enough that they were speaking out against the Israeli authorities, they just turned around and said, oh, well, you're now terrorists.
Who's going to be the Ukrainian bin Laden then in 20 years' time, mate? You got any ideas?
Well, yeah.
So anyway, we're talking about Shireen Abu Akleh.
Yes.
I noticed something. The Catholic Church condemned it. It was that bad. I mean, if you've got paedophiles saying, hey, wait a minute, this is quite terrible what you're doing here, then you need to have a really good hard look in the mirror, don't you, Matt?
That's when you know you're up shit street. That really is when you know you're up shit street.
I mean,
If the
how many people in Canada and Australia have we found that the Catholic Church have killed over the last few decades? And they're saying, oh, this is way too violent what you're doing.
Yeah. But I mean,
Anyway.
we had this though with Desmond Tutu.
Yeah.
If Desmond Tutu is calling your country an apartheid state, you can't now be sort of saying, yeah, but they've changed the meaning of the word apartheid. And that's the only way that they were able to produce a report that's claimed that we're an apartheid, because they've changed the meaning. No, the guy who knows apartheid firsthand better than anybody else left alive on the planet. I mean, bless him, he's no longer with us. But, you know, to be told Israel is an apartheid state by a South African has got to hit alarm bells.
Yeah. I know. I spoke to, I think it was Andrew Feinstein, who was a politician in South Africa, I think.
Yeah.
I did apologies if I get any of that wrong. He did a speech, I think it was a Free the Truth event that I covered last year, and he was saying how he's witnessed both, and Israel's far worse.
Oh,
Witnessed
beyond
both
belief.
apartheids, and Israel's worse, and they won't call it that in this country. This is something else that it's really important that we hear voices like yours to explain this, isn't it?
Especially with the politicians that we have sitting in government at the moment. You know, you look at people like Priti Patel, who are basically, you know, an Israeli puppet. Her strings are blue and white with little stars on them. She is that blatantly, obviously. I mean, she was fired from her last role in government for having relations with Israel.
I disagree.
Okay.
She was sacked after a second meeting with Theresa May, who was Prime Minister at the time, as International Business Secretary, I think it was. And she was fired because she went on a family holiday to Israel and met with a dozen Israeli officials while on this family holiday.
Yeah.
Which is obviously a no-no. This is, you know, but she says, Priti Patel says, she told the government that she was going to have these meetings beforehand. She told them. That's what Priti Patel says. Then she had a second meeting after it came out that I think she met with Netanyahu, and then she was fired, allegedly. And I say allegedly because 13 months later, she became Home Secretary. Now, is that a firing or is that a promotion 13 months later?
Well, it's a lot of companies do that. And in business, we would call that a sideways promotion. Sometimes it's to get somebody out of a position to prevent them from moving up. Other times it's to move them out of the limelight, to let somebody else fuck up, to then put them in as the ideal replacement. So whatever the official reasons were, she was still holding meetings with people that she shouldn't have been meeting with, under the pretense of being on holiday.
Okay.
Now, there is nobody more evil in Westminster than Priti Patel.
Oh, I don't
and
know.
I think,
I don't know.
Oh, I think she's probably lined up for the big job. I think there are enough people that have still got the Thatcher hard on.
Okay.
That want some evil or some person like that who comes across as being steely.
Yeah, I agree here. I think she could be being primed. I'm trying to be devil's advocate here because it would be very easy for me to pile on here. It really would, especially.
Yeah, I mean,
she's about to make a huge decision with Julian Assange, so I want to try and just maybe lick her ass a little bit. I don't know. I can't imagine it's easy being her. She gets a lot of flack for shit that, personally, I mean, I listen. I agree with your criticisms of her, but there is a cult online, especially on Twitter, which literally hates everything she does and will pile on any decision she makes and warp anything she says or does without really looking at the whole situation. So yeah, I'm not sticking up for her. I'm just saying, I don't think maybe, especially if where you're getting your news from as well, because if you're getting your news from Twitter and stuff like that, and you follow the right people on Twitter, you're getting only one shaft of information, and you're probably going to hate Priti Patel and think she's a witch and a vampire and all sorts. I've seen a lot, and I've seen a lot of justifiable criticisms of her, but I've seen a lot of criticisms of her that I've thought were unfair, and that is me being as nice as possible just because she's about to make this decision on Assange.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you ask me in 2 weeks after she signed the extradition, and I'll call her a cunt.
I think my issue with British politics, I don't like British politics anyway. So I don't like British politicians, whichever side of the, apart from Angela Rayner, is it?
God.
I think she's, for once, we've got somebody who doesn't seem to be particularly ashamed of speaking her mind. She's probably only speaking what she's been told to say, but that's the farce of politics.
Yeah.
The thing that the issue that I have is the fact that there are rumours that we will become a country very similar to America. You know, the law in America, if you work for the state, I think it's 30 or 32 American states, if you are a state employee, you are not allowed to speak out against Israel. BDS. So you're not allowed to follow campaigns like BDS.
Yeah, they're passing laws in this country right now to try and do that, aren't they? You won't get a job as a professor or anything like that if you support BDS.
Which is,
sorry, carry on.
It's basically a case of they're trying to say to you, we are now not just telling you through the news what we think you should know, we are now making it illegal for you to speak out your opinion on a subject that we've told you already what you're allowed to believe. And that is when we get the F word. You know, that is just where it's no longer politics. This is no longer believing in the party that you've put into power. This is just dictatorship. It's ridiculous.
I don't buy into the whole I've given up on politics in this country, and I really mean that. Our political system is not fit for purpose. No. There are 650 politicians in Westminster, and I can count the ones who I believe care about the people of the UK on the fingers of one hand, and Angela Rayner isn't one of them. I think that the UK needs to overhaul its political system rapidly. I think the time of this little club in Eton running the country needs to go. I think we need more people like you in positions of power, although people like you and I would not want to be a politician. You know, there's an argument to say that if you want to be a politician, that should exclude you from ever being one.
Completely.
But yeah, I've totally given up on pretty much all of the politicians. I mentioned Mari Black the other day. I think that's one of the good ones. And, you know, there are certain people in the Labour Party, but even them, you know, for instance, Zara Sultana from Coventry, I think she's excellent. But in my experience, that just means she's about to let me down badly on something. Because
she will be told very soon to now start towing the party line if she wants to go any further. I mean, I going on to politics for a second then, I don't understand how anybody can be a health secretary who hasn't been a nurse.
It makes no sense, doesn't it, mate?
No.
Shouldn't your health secretary be the doctor with the biggest fucking, you know, with qualifications up the wazoo? How can you be a health secretary and not be a medic of any kind?
Yeah. How can you be the education secretary unless you've been a school teacher who's been verbally and physically abused by 7 and 8 year old children, spitting at them in the face because we've taken away all of the powers of people working in the education system to do anything about those children?
How can you be a foreign secretary and be Liz Truss?
How can you be Liz Truss? How do you wake up on a morning, look in the mirror and go, today's going to be a good day?
Yeah, I often think whether other countries around the world, you know, they see Liz Truss coming and think, Britain, are you taking the fucking piss or what? What are you doing selling this woman? Are you just like, have you got no shame whatsoever? This person is just uninformed on everything. Literally everything.
Look at Bumbling Bojo, though. This persona that he's created of being bumbling so that he can get out of so many of the stupid things that he's done.
The reason he's like that, and the reason they're all allowed to do this, is because there are no journalists left, mate. There are no people there who could sit. There are people who will sit in front of a politician and tear them to shreds, just with questions and just saying this question, that question. Well, aren't you a giant hypocrite then? And I could do that for days, weeks, months, years with these politicians. I really could, but they're never going to allow somebody like me to sit in front of them and have these conversations. They're only going to allow people to sit in front of them that come from a certain background, that know they don't ask those questions. And if they do ask those questions, they quickly don't get to sit in front of Boris Johnson. Do you know what I mean? So it's not a case of, you know, you're overtly getting paid to say something. It's just that if you say something, you literally don't get paid, and you not just don't get paid, you don't even get a platform anymore to ask those questions. And this is how reality is being manipulated, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, wasn't it Trump who literally sent certain journalists to, you know, as we used to call it many years ago, Coventry? He would not answer any of their questions.
Yeah.
Because they were putting him in awkward situations. So he just ignored them, and he had them removed from the press room.
Yeah. And just so people don't think that this is an anti-Trump statement, this is just Biden did it recently. There was a presser, wasn't there? Jen Psaki, who was the press secretary, she was leaving, and if I've got a clip, I'll clip it in here. But
can I ask you a question from Dimmack? On the issue of the formula shortage. Can I ask you a question from Dimmack? Please stop. I understand, but you know, for 15 months you have on the formula. And I'm saying that for the sake of equity, we should have
thank you for your service, and thank your husband for his service as well. On the issue of formula, I think if anything, this crisis has reminded everyone that
Simon, if you could respect your colleagues and other media and reporters in here, that would be greatly appreciated. Go ahead, Mary.
If anything, this has reminded, I think, the entire country and the world that this is not a luxury item, but an essential. Thank you. Formula is not a luxury item, it is an essential. It is something that families across the country rely on.
there was a guy who was from some African station who's been sitting there for 18 months and never got to ask a question ever. And she's taking questions about, you know, some bollocks, something like what the color of her curtains were or something like that on her last day. And this guy was like, can you please, I've been 18 months, can I just ask you one question? And he got taken aside at the end, and I've forgotten his name now, Stephen something, but I'll put the clip in if I remember. And he got reprimanded by the White House saying, if you do that again, we're going to get rid of you. And they did that to Jim Acosta with Jim Acosta. I've seen him stand up in front of Trump, in front of the president, and fucking argue with him, Matt.
In the midterms.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate it.
Why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants in
Not
this
at all.
election
No, not
to
at all.
try
I
to
want
keep
them. I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign.
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
They're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's
I
not
think
an
you
invasion.
should, honestly, you know
miles
what?
away.
I
That's
think
not an
you
invasion.
should, honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings
Let
would
me
be
ask,
much better.
if I may ask one other question, Mr. President.
That's
I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
Excuse
President,
me, that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other
Peter,
question,
let's
if
go.
I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have
I'm not concerned
indictments-
about anything with
that you
the
may have
Russian
indictments coming down?
investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President. I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
Literally argue, and then he ostracized him, and then he wouldn't talk to him. But if this guy from Africa stood up and did what Jim Acosta did in that, he would have got shot. They would have never found the body. So just so people don't think that this is anti-Trump or anything like that, no, this goes through all administrations, and it doesn't matter. It's the same in this country as well. Okay.
Oh, completely. And I don't think there is no press room anywhere that doesn't happen.
Not a chance. No.
They have their favorites. They know the ones that are going to ask the not prearranged, because that would be, you know, conspiratorial, but the nice questions, the questions that they're going to be happy to answer.
Yeah, the allowed
even if
questions.
They sometimes push.
The questions that can be as well as combative as you want between certain parameters, you know, as Chomsky would say, and this is, I believe, the capitulation of the fourth estate in this way is what has caused this rise in the fascistic element and the breakdown almost of civil society, with people just arguing amongst themselves, because this is all divide and conquer tactics. One of the things I want to come back to as well, we're talking about Shireen Abu Akleh. I know we're jumping about in a bit.
Yeah.
Israel have refused to do a criminal investigation, haven't they, into her death? This is important.
I did a video on that this morning. I've not been able to
my immediate thought to that was, does it really matter? Israel, we know what Israel are going to find here in their investigation, but that's not right, is it? Because I've thought about that a little bit more, and there's a reason why they don't want to investigate here. Can you explain that?
Well, in my mind, I can only explain it in my opinion, and that is, how do we say this without bringing up too much of sort of 1939 to 1945? There was a group of people across Europe who treated another group of people like animals. And the more they treated them like animals, the more accepted it was that they do this. And this is what is happening throughout Palestine. People are born Palestinians and immediately from birth labeled as terrorists.
Yeah. Sorry, Matt, you've frozen a little bit.
Why don't we see it on a regular
Matt,
basis,
Matt,
Gordon,
can I just
about people who have their lives taken?
Okay, yeah, a little bit of what happened then. We lost a little bit.
Oh, sorry, did we?
Yeah, we just zoned out a little bit.
Sorry, mate.
Yeah, I think you were saying, like, if you're born a Palestinian, immediately you're classed as the enemy.
Yeah. When you're born a Palestinian, they have this theory now, or they have this Zionist belief that every Palestinian is considered a terrorist. And by doing that, it almost nullifies you from any guilt when a Palestinian
Desensitizes a nation, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, and they've done this, and they've created this almost not belief, but this narrative that they are a lower class of citizen, that anybody other than Israelis are a lower class of citizen. So by refusing to investigate Shireen's death, it's just another, well, it's not important enough. We don't need to do an investigation. Now, I don't know if that is the truth, but that is my opinion.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether if they're found guilty of this in a criminal investigation, whether that opens the door for not just more criminal investigations of crimes that they've committed, but also maybe of other countries in the world that are supporting it, etc.
But the ICC have already done this, Gordon. They've already said that Israel has committed crimes against humanity. There is even now a new report that some of the offensive actions against Palestinians constitute war crimes. So who's going to bring Israel to justice? Because the ICC have shown themselves to be spineless. The UN have shown themselves to be completely weak when it comes to Israel.
Well, there's no point in them, is there, when it comes to Israel or the UK or the US?
No.
We're exceptional, aren't we?
Oh, I mean, we are most definitely the exception to the rule. I mean, we go all the way back to something you mentioned a little while ago, and that's the 45-minute weapons of mass destruction. Why is Tony Blair still not been in front of The Hague?
And why is it whenever there's anything happening in the UK, the BBC are having Tony Blair on to see what he thinks about the situation? This is a man that lied us into a war that cost 1 million lives.
Yeah.
And it cost us how many lives over here, how much money, you know, it's shameful what happened. And, you know, there's been no repercussions for it. And when there are no repercussions for war crimes, well, I mean, then you're paving the way for more, aren't you?
Yeah. But you look at the Freudian slip of the tongue, your video just the other day, the most incredible Freudian slip of the tongue.
Russian elections are rigged. Political opponents are imprisoned or otherwise eliminated from participating in the electoral process. The result is an absence of checks and balances in Russia and the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of Iraq. I mean, of Ukraine. Iraq, anyway. 75.
I mean, if you or I had have written that script, we couldn't have written it any better.
It's a Dave Chappelle sketch.
It was...
Gotta get that oil.
I mean, I was amazed that they didn't suddenly have a power cut in the studio. I was just totally amazed, because you can just guarantee that all of the political advisors were up on the gallery floor going.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird when he slipped up and he said the invasion of Iraq instead of Ukraine. I laughed, as we have had a bit of a laugh here, but it's horrifying, isn't it? Because the audience, that's all they did. They just laughed about it. And then you start thinking, there wasn't, with me, there was like, oh man. And you didn't get that from that crowd. It was just a giggle, wasn't it? It was funny. This 75-year-old old bungling old war criminal, you know, getting things mixed up. Joe Biden's 79. And I don't think he knows what day of the week it is, unless, well, by the color of his ice cream. I think that's how he tells. You know, I'm not the man. He's got serious. I don't want to take the piss. He's got serious cognitive decline, and I think that's very apparent. And you know, it's very giggly, isn't it? You know, George Bush, yes, yeah, and then he went, "I'm 75," as if that excuses him. You know, murdering a million, responsible for a million deaths based on lies against a country that didn't attack the United States. And then what was born out of that era was obviously the Patriot Act. Now, the million lives of Iraq is one thing, but the Patriot Act is something else, because the Patriot Act allows America to just go around and do whatever the fuck it wants anywhere. And gives it exceptional status that they can do this. Well, but then when Russia does something 10% of what America has done, then then we've got to have war crimes, and we've got to have these soldiers. There's a soldier right now in Ukraine that's he's going to be the first war criminal. Really? Well, why are America caring about this? Because they don't even subscribe to this war crimes thing. They have said that if you try and commit, they will invade The Hague if we try to put an American soldier for war crimes, or anybody. They would invade The Hague. Netherlands would be taken over by, you know. So we've become exceptional. The criminal and this is why I think they don't want to open this criminal investigation in Israel, because if they're found guilty, then that is a war crime. And then they've opened the doorway to the criminal court that have already found, as you say, they've committed these crimes and crimes of apartheid, and the bombing of the TV tower. Was it last year or the year before? I mean,
last May.
It's like, and you've got the gall to say, "Oh, bring us a credible source." You're bombing the credible sources and shooting them in the face. You horrific monsters.
Yeah, and do you know the thing that's most upsetting? If we were to write the script as a John Grisham, we will find out that they will claim, that Shireen Abu Akleh was actually a terrorist.
This is an American citizen.
Yeah, but this
US
is what
citizen. So if she's a terrorist, then she's a traitor to America.
But that then means it was a justified kill. If it does come out that through an investigation they can, without a shadow of a doubt, prove that it was an Israeli soldier who shot her in the face, the narrative will switch and she will be made out to be some kind of a criminal, and that it was a good, God, I hate the fucking phrase, but a good kill. And this is what will happen, Gordon. And it fucking pains me to even suggest it, because this is when anybody who just picks up on this little section here will be, oh, fucking hell, MattMatt's a conspiracy theorist. He's gone off the rails. He's gone down the rabbit hole. But we've seen it before. Look at Julian fucking Assange, for God's sake. Look at what they've done. And they've created this narrative around him because legally, there was nothing they could do, so they had to have something else.
Yeah, and now they're going to try and figure out how, after doing all of that, they've got to try and figure out how to make sure that he's not called a political prisoner. Because if anybody calls him a political prisoner, they're screwed. They can't extradite him, and any continuation of this kangaroo court. Calling it a kangaroo court is an insult to kangaroos.
It is.
Kangaroos would be like, "Are you kidding me, Cobber? Fucking free that man. He's one of ours." You know, worst Australian accent ever. But you see my point. It's just, you know, kangaroos would be like, "Fuck you, Poms." This is lawfare that's now being kept here, keeping him in prison. They're using lawfare. They're using tricks of the law to keep him in the UK's most supermax of supermax prisons. And this is a man whose only crime is to tell the truth about criminals and criminal activity, and prove that not just, I mean, this is, you got to remember that it was only really when they went after him to a certain degree, but when he proved that the DNC were rigging their own primaries, that's when they really started turning the screw. If you look at the timeline, as I am very averse to, it was only when they really went after, and they showed the Democrats, and there's going to be lots of people who are going to be mentioning Seth Rich in the comments below this, I know, and that open investigation into the murder, that there was no finding as to why or how he was killed. It's dodgy, and it was after that they really went after him, if you look at the timeline. And so although the charges against him, these trumped up charges, these 17 charges, date previous to that, it was really when he went after and he showed the political system to be flawed in the way he did, that they went after him. And that means he is a political prisoner without a shadow of a doubt. You could prove that in a court of law, but to prove it in our court system, that could take a decade or two. And that is fine. That keeps him shut up. That keeps him silent. He's been silent now. We haven't heard his voice for over 4 years. He's been arbitrarily detained for 10. The United Nations say that he's in arbitrary detention. We ignore them. We say they're wrong. Although then we say, oh, the United Nations called Navalny a prisoner of conscience. Oh, let's get behind Navalny. And then obviously Amnesty International had to stop calling him a prisoner of conscience, because it came out that, he was actually said some quite racist things about foreigners and cockroaches. And this is who they support whilst demonizing Assange. I'm sorry, you brought Assange up a little bit, so I went on a rant.
No. Please do. I mean,
crikey, trod over everything that you were saying. I'm sorry.
No. It is one of those things that when it comes to playing, they play a politics of words, and they manipulate phraseology to confuse people. And it's a little bit like when you have to have a survey done to sell your house. Nobody can read that fucking documentation other than another lawyer.
Yeah,
because they have this different language, and that's all they're doing. But we see it all the time in the comment section of TikTok. Sorry to come back to TikTok, but
that's all right, man.
When you get these comments, you get people who say things, and then they will manipulate the tiniest bit of what you've said and then take it down a completely different road. And these people are doing that with Assange. Did he break the law?
The only law he broke was jumping bail.
The only thing that he did wrong shouldn't have been wrong in the first place.
Yeah, he jumped bail, and I think he will admit that he jumped bail, but he says he jumped bail because there was a sealed indictment in America that meant that as soon as he was in custody, the sealed indictment would get unsealed and the extradition to America would begin. He said that it was a ruse all along, and what he said was exactly what happened. As soon as he was in custody, Sweden finally closed the investigation into sexual misconduct. That's all it was. There were no charges ever, anywhere. He was interviewed for 2 days by Swedish authorities in the embassy, but as soon as he was in custody in the UK, Sweden closed the case within days. The unsealed indictment happened almost immediately, and then 17 further charges were brought forward 3 weeks later. Everything he said that was going to happen happened. So even the law that I will sit here and say, yeah, he broke that law, was for the reasons that he said it was. And not only that, who gets a 50-week sentence, a 52-week sentence for jumping bail in Belmarsh with no priors, and then gets kept for a further 2 years after serving that sentence in full? Even our sentencing, the laws are after 6 months of that sentence, he should have been freed. Yeah. But they kept him there, and they've kept him there ever since. And I think it certainly seems to me, based on history, the plan is to keep him there until he eventually dies of natural causes. In other words, until we eventually torture him to death.
But the reason being, if we can make him a bigger story than what he actually released, then they win. And that's what's happened.
Yeah.
Because the story is now, the story is Julian Assange. It is not what he released and the information that he spread into public view. They've managed to get that now behind the wardrobe and under the carpet, because the bigger story is Julian Assange. And this is exactly what happens in apartheid Israel. You call it apartheid Israel, 4 of the most renowned bodies looking into apartheid have said it is an apartheid. Instead of now fighting,
who are they, Matt?
What they've said, they're just fighting. Sorry?
Who are those 4?
Oh,
Amnesty, Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, and who's the other one?
Who's the 4th? I don't know. Let me just see if I can Google it. Yeah, I can't remember. I will remember before we go any further, but I'm sure it's 4. It might be 3, but I thought it was 4. I think
pretty much they all do, to be honest.
Yeah, but instead of attacking the apartheid and trying to find a way of proving, because they can't prove them wrong because it's blatantly fucking obvious that it's apartheid, they're now trying to bring down the people that have said it.
Yeah.
So it's a case of, who listens to fucking, Amnesty International anymore? They're just a bunch of far left extreme, and that's the tact. And that's exactly what they did with Assange. That's exactly what they're doing with Amnesty International. They can't fight the narrative, so they've got to now fight the narrator.
Yeah, and Julian Assange is obviously well liked by people that support the Palestinian cause.
Absolutely.
I think that's fair to say, because Julian and WikiLeaks didn't just release information on America, as many people may say in the chat below. Oh yeah, you go over to WikiLeaks, type in Russia, and just see how many millions of documents they've got on Russia. Type in Israel, you will start seeing that it's not just America, and it released stuff on us as well in the UK and Australia, etc. He's brought down governments in Africa and entire regimes, because I repeat this often. If wars can start with lies, then peace can begin with the truth. And that, in my opinion, is what Julian represents. He's journalism.
Yeah.
He's journalism. And right now it's in jail. And since it's been in jail, the airwaves have been flooded with bollocks, mate.
Yeah.
It's happening on a daily basis in every country in the world.
You said it a number of times. There are no more journalists. There are narrators. And, the true journalism is YouTube, is TikTok, is people who, they're not reading from scripts. Nobody has given them a script. They are literally just pouring out what they see. Now, you can then choose to either believe what they're telling you, or then go and look at it yourself. And I've said all along, that is what I try to do on TikTok. And I fall way too many times into the pothole of replying to people's stupidity. And that gets me into trouble. And that's not what I was on TikTok for in the first place. I want to say, did you know this happened in Palestine this week? And I want somebody to literally go, oh, I didn't know that. And then go and look themselves, and then go and find themselves and find out the information themselves. Because it's only ever my opinion. And broad as I try to be, I look at as many Israeli newspapers on a morning as I do Palestinian newspapers, because I want to be able to see where people are coming at it from both sides. And even when I look at Israeli newspapers, I can't help but see the American undertones in their journalism and the phrases that are used to sweeten the pot. It's horrible.
What do you mean? Can you give any examples?
when they talk about the BBC, for instance, the BBC, whenever they report on last May, when Israel had this massive bombing campaign, if an Israeli lost their lives, then they were slaughtered. If a Palestinian lost their life, they were collateral damage.
They died.
They died of natural. Yeah, they died of natural causes when the bullet went through. But you know, they were collateral damage as part of a military campaign.
Yeah.
But Israelis were slaughtered, and it's the Fox versus CNN thing again. But when you look at Israeli journalism, and you know, Israelis are always innocent. And the question that I've asked many, many times is, can you genuinely have an innocent burglar? You know, because let's face it, we handed over the keys in 1948.
Yeah.
And we created this monster, and then we ran away as a country. We ran away, and we just let them.
Yeah, pretty much. As I understand it, I mean, I don't know, the quickest way for those who were watching that don't quite understand, there's something called the Balfour Declaration, isn't there? And this is what it pretty much goes back. This is a declaration from, it was an MP in this country, Balfour. I think he was a politician, wasn't he? And he wrote a letter to, here we go, with the conspiracy theorists below, to Lord Rothschild, who was head of the British Board of Jews, I think, at the time. And he basically said that we, as the UK, the United Kingdom, commit to a homeland for the Jewish people in the state of Palestine, which we had gained as the British Empire had gained from the end of World War I and the breakdown of the Ottoman Empire. Is that correct?
It went back. It wasn't originally going to be in Palestine. They
was
just
it
said
Africa?
that
Did I mention? Was it Africa? It was going to be
somewhere. Was it Uganda? It was one of the African nations that we were then in control of, in the same way that we were under sort of the guardianship of, and we were going to give them this place in Africa, because we basically, as part of the Balfour Declaration, we'd agreed that we would give them a Jewish state. We didn't say where. And yes, there was a lot of talk that it was going to be in Africa. Theodor Herzl, who was the head of the Zionist movement at the time, had basically said, no, we want Israel.
Okay.
That's we've got historical heritage on that land. We want that region, or Israel. We want Palestine because, you know, we have historical heritage. That's where a lot of the religious iconic venues and locations are.
But Palestinians have heritage there.
Oh, hugely. Hugely.
Not like Jewish of just the Jewish people have the whole, and you know, there's even as I understand it, even the Jewish claim, or the Zionist claim rather, that it was the Jews who were there first, is like, well, how did you get there? Well, you got rid of the Canaanites. And who are the Canaanites? The Canaanites are the descendants of the Palestinians. So even if you go through that, then I think that's right, isn't it?
It is, but this is where
we're getting into the land of, like, you know, historical.
One of the biggest things that I profess is history does not give you the right to be an arsehole.
No.
And this is the thing. When we handed over the keys to Palestine, when we gave away the keys, it's not like it was an empty field. We're not talking about, right, there's a desert over there. We're going to sign the deeds over to you guys. Rock your socks off.
Yeah.
Under the Ottoman Empire, Jews, Christians, atheists, Muslims lived side by side. Now, if I say they lived peacefully, somebody will throw there was a massacre, but I don't want to get into that just yet. But so I won't say they lived peacefully, but I will say that they lived alongside each other in relative harmony. And then the Zionists came.
Okay.
And that's when the situation changed drastically. So Britain handed over the keys.
Yeah, there was a lot of. We ended up going back to the United Nations, if I remember right. Is that correct? And basically going back to the United Nations and saying, listen, we kind of thought this was a good idea, but we haven't got a solution for it. We've stirred up a fucking hornet's nest, basically. Can you help? And United Nations in 1948?
48,
said that, well, I mean, now the United Nations have, and I think Amnesty International then had some part in it, but now they're saying, listen, what the apartheid wasn't part of the deal, was it?
No,
that's what it comes down to.
They drew some boundaries and they said, you get this bit, you get that bit, now all behave. Some people from Palestine sort of turned around and said, well, hang on a minute. That was mine. That's my field. That's my olive tree. That's my olive grove. Why have you just given it away? Egypt got involved. We're horribly paraphrasing history.
Yeah.
But the reason I want to not get into too much history is whatever then occurred did not give Israel the rights to continue this for 74 years, stealing Palestinian land.
No, and the only reason I brought it up, Matt, I understand that totally, and I'm on board. And the only reason I brought it up was we need to know the origins if we're going to find the solution to this, aren't we? We're going to need to know where everything went wrong, where things were taken advantage of, and we're going to need to have an actual conversation about these things. And this is why it's so important that voices like yours are heard and not shut up.
Yeah, this is where I fall over though, because I am such a learner in the history of this region. What really winds me up is the selective history that is used by Zionists. So they want to go back and say, well, it's our land. First of all, we were there first. Well, no, you weren't. But they claim to have been there first because that's when they claim history started, when they were on the land. And then they'll tell you that God gave them the land. So you've not only got selective history, but you've then got selective religion, because if you want to go down the road of religion, God also told them, thou shalt not kill.
Yeah.
But you keep killing everybody.
Yeah.
So, you can't just choose which bit of religion you want to follow. And in the same way that you can't just choose when you think history began, because before the Jews were on that land, the Canaanites were there. Before the Canaanites were there, somebody was there. Because humans have existed long, long before religion.
Yeah. I've recently done my DNA to try and find out, like, what I'm made of.
Right.
If it comes back that I'm like 5% Irish, do I get a paddy field somewhere in the Emerald Isle? Because that's kind of like the same theory, isn't it?
Well, I know where my heritage is, and my family are originally from Central Europe. I can just imagine me rocking up to a field in Sicily saying,
It's mine now. It's mine now. Go on.
Can you
mine now? This is you got 12. You got 12 weeks. Look, legal document. Legally, we're going to evict you as well. We're not going to force you.
We've had this argument so many times. So many of these Zionists are American. And I can tell it sort of gets to about this time of the day. The Americans are waking up on the West Coast and my comment section goes nuts.
Yeah.
How many of these Americans, if Native American Indians rocked up on their door with an eviction notice signed by one of, a Native American lawyer saying, this is my house, you need to fucking do one.
I wonder what had happened.
And yet we just accept it because nobody wants to speak out against the Israelis because you get branded as anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And look where that gets you. Because speaking out against Zionism is anti-Semitic, according to them.
Well, not just that. I mean, if you're a journalist right now and you are reporting on this, well, they're going to silence you one way. If it's not by shooting you in the face, which was the case with Shireen Abu Akleh. They're going to silence you in other ways. You know, only the approved journalists are going to be able to give you the news soon. And I can see that happening. There's problems at the moment with the National Union of Journalists in this country. They wouldn't give me a card. And I'm hearing rumors that they won't give a card as well. I'm hearing rumors that they're so I think that there's things changing in this country with regards to journalism, and I think pretty soon only the approved journalists will be able to give you any information whatsoever. And people like you and I, Matt, we're going to be labeled as terrorists.
Yeah,
that's the way it's going. And I know people listening to this might think that this is a really crazy conspiracy theory, but I'm a student of history. I can see where this is going. It's not like this is the first time it's ever happened before.
History is circular,
isn't it?
History is most definitely circular. And, you know, we, how do we say this? I try to underline everything I say with one sentence, and that is we should be learning from history and not fucking repeating it.
Yeah.
One of the worst things to ever happen to us as a human race was the Holocaust. It was just diabolical. Why are we now allowing the same thing to happen again?
Wasn't the whole thing never again? Wasn't that never again?
Yeah.
Isn't that what they say?
Well, but yeah, it's never again under our rules. You know, that they are basically doing to the Palestinians what Hitler tried to do to them. And as soon as you say something like that, it's, oh, you're anti-Semitic.
It's
if speaking out against Zionism and Israel is anti-Semitic, then that is a t-shirt I will wear.
Yeah.
And I hate the idea of that, because I was brought up, I'm probably a good number of years older than you, but I remember as a kid,
I wouldn't have said, probably not, mate. Probably not.
Well, I look like I had a longer paper round then. I remember as a kid being fearful of being called anti-Semitic. If you made a joke against Jewish people and you got called anti-Semitic, you felt ashamed.
Yeah.
It was like, shit, I'm going to get battered when I get home. But now they've just nullified this phrase. And because they've made it so that as soon as you open your mouth against human rights abuses performed by Israel, they claim you're anti-Semitic. Well, they've kind of ended up making it a non-thing.
Yeah, it's almost become like if you haven't been called an anti-Semite, then you know
you haven't told the truth.
You're doing on the Middle East. It's almost become like that. And if you look at the people who they've had their lives ruined through this smear that you're talking about. I've mentioned Chris Williamson. We've touched on Jeremy Corbyn.
Yep.
There are many others. There's Chris Wadsworth. There's Jackie Walker. There are so many other people. I used to say I've got a lot of friends in the Labour Party, but now I have to say I've got a lot of friends that used to be in the Labour Party.
Be in the Labour Party, yeah.
You know, it's become that. Well, we've got to the political system because of this now. You've got no choice. The Labour Party is almost more conservative than the Conservative Party as it stands. Now we're jumping back to politics, but I mean, the Conservatives' big plan for the minimum wage is to get it from £9.50 to £10.50, and the Labour Party came out and Keir Starmer went, okay, £10, we'll split the difference. You've gone 50 pence less than the Tories. And if you actually look at his financial plan, then look at his financial plan. I've done a video of it on this channel. Keir Starmer's financial plan, it will seem very similar to you because it's the Tory one of the last 30 years. This is a knight of the Queen's realm. There is no, that the Labour Party isn't the left. Yep. You know, it's not the left. The left have left the Labour Party. If you're left in the Labour Party now, I've got to say why. And this is kind of one of the reasons why when you mentioned Angela Rayner earlier, I'm like, you know, and it's the same with Richard Burgon, who's great. He's been outspoken on Assange, although none of them have been as outspoken as they should be. Java Sultana is another one that's very good. And I mentioned Marvy Black, although that's the SNP. But there are a few that are decent politicians, but some of them are in the Labour Party. And I've got to ask, why? Yeah. Doesn't that mean, if you're still in the Labour Party, doesn't that mean you've knuckled under? Doesn't that mean you're not telling the truth? Because if you told the truth, you would have been evicted from it. You would have been cast out in this witch hunt that was a scam.
Yeah. I mean, I concentrate so much on my TikTok news being on Palestine. I have to admit, I've turned my back on British politics. If somebody said to me, there's £1 million, MattMatt, if you can name me 10 front bench politicians, I'd fail.
I probably would.
I'd walk away without
I'd probably get up there, but I'd probably get a couple wrong. Yeah,
I wouldn't be able to do it. And it's because I turn my back on it because it embarrasses me. It makes it upsets me. And I hate to use that phrase again, because that means that they are getting to me. But it does genuinely upset me that we can have so many liars that get away with it. They run roughshod. In the comment section of my TikTok a little while ago, somebody had said, Britain stands with Israel. And I said, no. You're confusing politics with people. Just remember that our leaders, this government that we have, was voted in by fewer people than didn't. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know, there was only
it's a tiny proportion of people who actually voted for the Conservative government. That's correct.
But when they then speak on our behalf, they're only speaking for a ridiculously small population of this country. The number of people who are pro-Palestinian is growing in this country exponentially on a ridiculous basis, which is why if they try and push through that BDS is an illegal thing to follow, to fund, to back, this country will blow the fuck up.
I don't
mean
you don't mean literally, obviously. I hope there'll be a backlash against that. But I mean, I've seen them. I did videos. I was talking to the missus earlier today about how I've done videos years ago with I remember sitting there and the lockdown just started. I'm like, here they come to take your rights away. I've been saying that this is the path they're leading down now for years. I've been saying this is what it's going to lead to. You mentioned there that the feelings will blow up in this country if they do that. You're right, because I've been on marches where 200,000 Palestinian people were supporting Palestine, where you had politicians, you had Julian Assange's wife up there making, and I've covered these events. The mainstream media didn't, obviously, they weren't told to go there by their puppet masters, the people that are pulling their purse strings, these three companies that own basically 90% of all the media in this country, I've been on those protests. I don't remember too many protests for Israel. In fact, I remember one and there was about 50 people there and one of them was Tommy Robinson. That's the support you've got.
Yep.
That was covered in the media. They covered that in the media. They didn't cover the one with 200,000 people. No. The one with 200,000 people, the story that day was 3 idiots with Palestinian flags driving through the center of London shouting anti-Semitic tropes. That was the story. That's what they concentrated on. 3 idiots in the car. Well, if you're going to do that and you're going to ignore the 200,000 people who peacefully marched for Palestine, your narrative is going to be the 3 idiots in the car, then you are manipulating the minds of the masses, and you are doing it in open view of everybody. And it's not hard for people like me and you to point it out. And this is a scary message, because that transcends everything. That people will go, oh yeah, I can see what's going on here. Gordon and Matt told me the BBC are lying bastards, and that's why they're going to shut us up, mate. And this is what's coming next. This censorship is going to get a lot worse. I mean, we've
done the loop. They shut that. Who is they? This is the thing. A lot of people will say it's conspiracy theory as soon as you use the phrase they, because who are they? Well, they are anybody who disagrees with you. Now, whether they achieve the goal of shutting you up depends on the platform.
Yeah.
And who controls the platform at the end of the day? Well, they've got to make money. They're making money from somebody, whether it's advertisers, and advertisers do not want people saying Israel is bad, because that's always considered anti-Semitic. So we need to shut them down because they're not generating the revenue that we need from our advertisers. And that is what the hell is moving in the background? Oh, it's a dog.
That's my little doggy. She was she was
wow.
Yeah, she was camouflaged, wasn't she, against the black?
She suddenly saw them.
She's gone back to sleep.
Okay. So yeah, who are the people that are silencing us? Well, the fact is that anybody can report you. Right back at the beginning of this, you were saying that you had quite a number of videos that were reported, but you'd gotten the videos back on appeal. Yeah. Well, the way that TikTok works and the way the TikTok algorithm works is that doesn't matter. Because if for instance, I have 3 videos that are all taken down on the same day, I will be landed with a 5-day posting ban.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to post for 5 days. So I appeal those videos, and those videos all win. Fantastic.
But you still get the ban. I've had the situation where you still get the ban.
Now,
You've done nothing wrong. They've wrongly taken your video down, but you still get the ban.
Yeah.
How is that?
They might reduce it to a 24-hour posting ban or a 48-hour posting ban, but you still have a black mark against you.
Yeah.
And that stays on your account. So the next time, and the thing is, this is where the creators or the commentators, the commenters who don't like your content, they know the game now.
Yeah.
So they don't have to win. They just have to report.
They just have to shut you up.
This is what's called a mass report. And this is what happens. They get into their WhatsApp groups, and 3 or 4 people who have 4 or 5 accounts each pick a creator, and they mass report. Yeah. Because your account has received 30 reports within an hour of the same kind of thing, bullying, harassment, or hate speech, or hateful behavior, that's when they wipe your account straight out. No right of appeal. Take it down. That's why I'm now on 13 accounts. So it's not what I'm saying. It's the fact that they can do it, and they can do it very, very easily. So I don't think for a second it's just me, because I know lots of other pro-Palestinian creators who receive exactly the same abuse on a daily basis. And it's the same people. We see the same commenters across the board, and they've even made the same comment. We've reacted in the same way. We then get taken down for bullying and harassment.
Do you think it's targeted in that way, that they're trying to say things to you on purpose to get you to react like that? So they
totally.
It's like a boxing match. It's like a game to them.
Yeah, there's a poster going around at the moment, and I don't know its genuine origin, but it shows a JCB. It's in Arabic, so I've not been able to read it, but it shows a JCB taking down the dome of Al-Aqsa Mosque. And they're basically saying that on this date, Israel wants to destroy the dome.
The Al-Aqsa Mosque is extremely important to the Muslim
it is, yeah.
religion.
It is. It's second only to Mecca, I believe. I mean, I'm not Islamic. I'm not a Muslim. I am out and out atheist, so I know very little about the religion itself. But I believe it is second only to Mecca. Or it ranks right up there. But then I am sure that this poster has been done, because at the moment, Gaza especially and the West Bank it's a melting pot. It is right on the cusp of boiling over. With what happened during Ramadan and the attacks by the IOF on Al-Aqsa Mosque, then with the tragic death of Shireen, and then the attack on the funeral of Shireen, and a few days later the attack on the I've forgotten the guy's name, the young guy who passed away from his injuries, but they attacked his funeral as well. It is an absolute boiling pot at the moment.
I also, while the protesters were out protesting Shireen's murder, you'd got Israeli settlers stealing their homes.
Yeah.
I've seen a video of that.
Yeah.
I'll cut that in as well if I can remember.
Yeah. Yeah, they literally. Where was that in the news?
It was on TikTok. It wasn't in the news. No,
that's what I mean.
News.
It's totally ignored, and that's why I believe that this is a propaganda piece showing this JCB or this digger. Let's not use the brand name. This digger taking down the dome of the mosque, and I am sure it is to push these people, because if the Palestinians react in the way that I can regretfully see coming,
report, bam.
But not just that, the IDF will just, that's when we'll get the airstrikes over Gaza again. We'll get these make-believe rocket towers on top of mosques, on top of hospitals, on top of schools, on top of journalist buildings. You know, Al Jazeera headquarters was really a rocket manufacturing plant. And yet, why didn't, if that's the case, why didn't the IDF go in there afterwards and find all the rocket manufacturing evidence and go, look, we can prove it? No, they just flattened the building.
No, they're covering up. They're destroying evidence of their own war crimes. Let's face it, that's what they're doing. They gave them no chance to get their equipment out of that building before they bombed the crap out of it. They're destroying evidence of their own war crimes, and they can see how the feeling around the world has changed. And you mentioned there about you know, you don't look at the UK politics anymore and whatever, and you don't look at the UK side of things because you're pretty much ashamed. I wrote down ashamed. I grew up, Matt, in the 70s on stories. You know, it's only 30 years, so it was only a generation before that went through the Blitz and the World War II. And I grew up on stories of heroic victories against the Nazis. I grew up on stories of the Battle of Britain and how the radar network saved us, and how that was incredible ingenuity, and how we used to, you know, put up inflatable tanks on the east of England to make us think that before we did D-Day, and the deception and everything like that. I grew up of heroic stories of heroes fighting, heroes from all walks of life, just normal people who went over and above to defeat fascism. And now I look at this country and I'm ashamed of it. I was so proud of it growing up. But now I look at what has happened over the last 20, 30 years and feel ashamed of what we've become. When Julian Assange was dragged from his political asylum, he wasn't shouting, "I'm not a rapist." He wasn't shouting, "It's all untrue. He was shouting, the UK has no sovereignty." And that's what I want to really touch on here.
Yeah.
Why are we protecting Israel? Why aren't we telling the truth about Israel? And why aren't we telling the truth about America as well? Why is it we're plainly lying to the British people about America and its influence over us? Why aren't we talking about Jeffrey Epstein and his obvious honey trap operation on behalf of intelligence services in Israel and the United States? Let's face it, they're the same entity. Why aren't we talking about Ghislaine Maxwell and him being photographed in Sandringham, the Queen's residence? Why aren't we talking about that? And why are we talking about whether a woman's actually a woman or not, when that affects about 1 in how many, 10,000 people in this country? We're talking about that quite a lot, aren't we? Mari Black mentioned this manufactured culture war, and I think she's onto something in her speech yesterday. We're propping up certain things that affect very few people in this country, whilst not talking about things that affect everybody, aren't we?
There was a lot of questions there.
Sorry, mate.
I think the first thing, money. Why do we not speak up against Israel? Money. And again, it falls into the realm by many as conspiracy theories. But you look at the World Banks and who owns the World Banks. You know, there's a lot of money in those banks, and the wealthy do not want to upset the apple cart, which is why Israel gets away with a lot of what it does, because of the origins of where that money.
Well, yeah, not only that, the UK used to be a great empire, and now basically it's a giant money laundering operation. I think that's fair to say, isn't it?
Massively, yeah. As far as sort of moving into the Epstein side of things, powerful people don't want us talking about powerful people, and they will use diversionary tactics to the very best of their abilities. And if they can use, you know, gender reassignment, and is a woman a woman, should a gender reassigned sports person be allowed to do this? This is all creating a very, very good thing to talk about.
We could have a right rigorous debate about that, couldn't we? We could have a real rigorous debate about that, and there'd be a lot of us having opposing views, and we'd be fighting amongst ourselves over.
Yeah. But so while you were doing that, it's the magician. It's the pick a card, any card. You know,
and that's not diminishing the rights of trans people.
God, no.
If you look at my history, I'm a champion of them up to a point. Okay,
yeah. But I think it is something that needs to be discussed. But I also think that when we discuss it, the opposing view is sometimes thrown in by the people who want to keep us discussing it. Because while all that is happening, they're getting away with absolute blue bloody murder behind us. And I think that is a vital piece of news, and it's too big for you and I to sort of discuss. This would be a 24-hour podcast, just touching on the surface of the Wizard of Oz and the man behind the curtain. And the fact that the more you look at the smokescreen and the sparklers and the fire bombs and the big holographic projection, the people pulling the levers behind the scenes and controlling the narrative.
Not look at that man. Pay no attention to him.
No, you know, don't look at the man behind the curtain. You know, it really is. We are living in George Orwell, in an Orwellian cloak and dagger.
Yeah, we are.
It's
here, I think.
It is. It is, but I think this is why. And whenever I do a TikTok live, which I've gotten back into doing on a semi-regular basis, I always try to say to people, for God's sake, share whatever you know. Even if you're shy, do a TikTok about something that you know, because it's going to become the only way that people can get reality. Because the news that we know at 9 o'clock on the Beeb or whatever time, I don't even know what time the news is on nowadays. This is how little I watch of TV. But it used to be a case of, 6 o'clock came and, we turned on to BBC Two because the news came on. And then it was the news at 9 on the Beeb and the news at 10 on ITV. But those outlets of news media, that's not news anymore.
Yeah.
That's just the narrative that is fed to you to keep you where they want you to be. And it
is
I'm going back down.
No, it's government propaganda. That's what you're getting. It's propaganda, and it is non-stop, and it doesn't matter where you get it from. They're all the same. They're all owned by the same people, and when they're all owned by the same people, a tiny subset of people own the strings over the media, then it's very easy to prop up the people that are talking about the things that you want them to talk about, and they're not talking about the things that that you and I talk about. And they're propping up if you look at what the Guardian was 10 years ago to what it is today, it's shocking. Just 10 years ago, go back pre-Snowden. So pre the Snowden reports, when the GCHQ went in there and made them literally bash the crap out of hard drives in the basement and stood there and watched them doing it.
Yeah.
Because they reported factual information that Snowden had leaked to them done great journalism, won awards for it. GCHQ made them bash the crap out of those hard drives. And since then, it's become nothing more than GCHQ's mouthpiece.
Yeah.
They publish literal fake news in the Guardian, literal fake news. They published an article about Paul Manafort, the campaign manager of Trump, meeting Julian Assange several times in the Ecuadorian embassy. This is the most surveilled property on the planet, and has been for so. It was total fabrication. It was all based on they had to ghost edit the whole article to adding things like sources say and little caveats. It was written by 3 separate people, one of which wouldn't even put his name on the digital print of it.
Yeah.
It was just it was the biggest load of bollocks you've ever read, written chiefly by a guy called Luke Harding, who is a tool of the deep state in this country, the GCHQ, the MI6. He's a tool of them. He's kneecapped his own profession, that man has. Luke Harding. He's not Luke Harding, he's Tonya Harding. It's ridiculous what he gets away with. And he's got New York Times best-selling books, for Christ's sake. And then, he got interviewed by a load of people in America who all gave him shining interviews. And then he ran into the buzzsaw Alan Marte at the Real News, who really showed him to be the person who he was, the propagandist who he was, and just kept asking a simple question on Luke Harding's book on collusion. Where's the collusion? And he couldn't point it out. In the end, had to call Alan Marte some sort of Putin apologist and quit the interview. And that's what happens when one of these propagandists sits down with an actual real person who's going to ask them a question, and they fall over. They've got nothing to lean back on. And this is why voices like yours and mine do not get heard in the mainstream. It's not just our voices, it's any voices that are similar to it. And they're creating a different reality. And get ready to start doing signs and walking with goose stepping, because I'm telling you, it is coming in if they carry on with this. And it is not hyperbole. This is going to happen. It's happening. It's happening. They've got apartheid in Israel right now, and we are not calling it out.
No,
we're going along with it. We're going along with whatever America wants in the world. Doesn't matter what it is.
We're bombing.
It doesn't matter how ridiculous it is. We're going along with it. It's just preposterous. And this is this is where we're heading, and I've been saying it for years, and this is why it takes such a toll on people's mental health who are covering it.
Yeah, the things to always look out for, if anybody still reads newspapers, is always look out for the phrase, it has been reported.
Yeah, or sources say. Or
sources say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been reported that this has been said. If you say it's been reported in front of a sentence, you can then say whatever you fucking want.
Yeah.
Because you're not saying it, you're just forwarding what you've heard.
Yeah.
Because it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit.
I had an instance of this just a few weeks ago with the war in Ukraine, where there's lots of stories coming out that the Russians have mass raped Ukrainian women. Right? Yep. I'm not saying that this hasn't gone on. I'm sure it has. War is hell, and war crimes happen in war, and men are men, and men who are in war are vicious men who are down to their most savage, most, but I'm saying it does happen on both sides. I've seen reports, I've seen pictures of what the Ukrainians do to the Romas in Ukraine, and it's not pretty. They're tying them to posts so these people get raped overnight, just because they stole a loaf of bread, or just because they, maybe think a certain way. And there were reports that the Russians in, was it Bucha?
Yeah.
Had mass raped 20-something girls in a basement, of which a dozen of them are now pregnant. It's like, all right, okay. First of all, the Russians withdrew from Bucha. They withdrew. They weren't fought back. So the Russians have gone in, raped all these people, and left them all alive, pregnant, in Ukraine, so the Ukraine can then use them as a propaganda thing. And these reports came from one person within the Ukrainian human rights person, who is a government official. And it all came from her. One person. She said this happened. Then the Human Rights Watch got involved in that. I think they spoke to maybe 2 people or 3 people on the phone who were in Ukraine. This can easily be set up. Next thing you know, this story has flooded the planet. The planet. Everybody, the iPaper, the Mirror, the Sun, everybody is run with this. It was the say-so of one person based on something that, I'm sorry, the Russians have gang raped women in a basement and then left them there for the Ukrainians to find them. This doesn't add up.
No.
This doesn't make sense. And also, a dozen of these 18 women are now pregnant. I don't even think the timeline of how long they were in control of Bucha would even make that possible. But there's been no secondary reporting by any of these news agents. I think the only person who's done actually any secondary investigation is me, because I looked at it and it all came down to this one woman from Ukraine who said this one thing, and then every other newspaper has been, this paper reported it, or this person said it. They've all based it on other people's reports, and it's exactly what you said. I don't think any of it, I'm sure it's happened over there. I'm sure it has, but this is one story that is great propaganda. You've seen it with the ghost of Kiev, this crack pilot who was brilliant, who was shooting down Russian airplanes all over the place. Now, it's all bollocks, it's all rubbish, but every outlet in the West picked it up and ran with it because it was great propaganda. That alone should tell you that you've been told 100% bollocks about you. Nothing we have been told about Ukraine is true. Nothing. Not through mainstream media sources.
The double standards on what has been reported from the Ukraine is what makes me literally sick. When I saw, I think it Sky News that were reporting on the people in the street that were making the Molotov cocktails, and they were the freedom fighters, and somebody had they'd sent them the recipe that if you broke up polystyrene and mixed that with the petrol, it would stick to, the vehicles, so that they would burn longer. No, what they do that for is so that when it gets onto a human, you can't stop, drop and roll, because you basically become covered in this molten plastic, and people burn, and the pain is, it's brutal. If that was any other country, i.e. Palestine, the IDF would have bombed them in the street as terrorists.
Can you imagine? And can you imagine Western news organizations reporting glowingly on Palestinians making Molotov cocktails?
Yeah.
And when you think about it, that is a direct comparison almost. I mean, and Russia aren't engaged in an apartheid in Ukraine, but they are illegally occupying parts of it. So there's a lot of similarities there, isn't there? And this is obviously a war of aggression against with a bigger country against a littler country. Why the dual standard there? It's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up.
There shouldn't be a dual standard, but the fact is that one, the Ukraine is most definitely, I won't even call them an ally of America, because they're just a puppet state. The whole government it's the 52nd state. They've just created a government that falls into American understanding. So, and Palestine is obviously against another one of America's puppets.
Yeah.
So, that's why they refuse to even allow the two to be compared. But I mean, crikey, you've got two nuclear powers trying to overthrow and to occupy and to wipe out a much weaker nation, but we're not allowed to compare the two. We're not allowed to see the comparisons. We've got to call one set of people freedom fighters, and we have to. And even in British sports, you've got football teams flying the Ukrainian flag and praising Ukrainians for standing up. And yet you've got sportsmen, you've got footballers who individually carried the Palestinian flag onto the pitch and were fined £25,000 each.
Yeah. It's you can't bring politics into sport, though.
Can't bring politics into sport
unless it's for Ukraine.
Yep. Because that's not politics, that's freedom fighting.
Have you have you heard of the biolabs in Ukraine? I mean, the US are funding. I'm trying to imagine if Russia did that in Canada.
Yeah.
Or Mexico.
Yeah.
You're saying there that it's 50 seconds. It's a proxy war, mate. It's a proxy war. Mate, I've enjoyed speaking to you. It's been 2 hours. I've got to bring you on because I've enjoyed this so much. Thanks so much, mate.
Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Whatever you carry on doing from this day forward, you will definitely still have me as a fan.
Listen, I'm going to continue this podcast. I'm going to continue doing it. I haven't done enough of them, is the truth, but I'm going to continue doing it. Once a week, just have a podcast with people. I'd love it if you come back on.
Anytime, mate.
But I'm going to continue doing this. I think my time of talking on the news and what have you, and just basically, I need to start swimming with the current for a little bit. I feel as if I feel as if there was I've been watching the Amber Heard trial. Have you been watching it? And the Amber Heard Johnny Depp. What do you think about that?
I've only ever caught the smallest of clips on TikTok. And I've tried not to watch them to the end because I know how the algorithm works, and it means that your FYP just becomes flooded with just that subject. But it's just been hilarious. It's genuinely just been hilarious, and in the wrong way.
Yeah. It's like this bitch. Fucking hell. This cunt. No, I'm going to call him a cunt. Yeah, believe all women, but Amber Heard's a cunt. She coincided this op-ed in the Washington Post. She coincided it, and there's emails going backwards and forwards between her and the ACLU, who she promised half of her $7 million settlement to, by the way, the ACLU and the Children's Hospital. They haven't got it.
Nope.
They got 100 grand from Johnny Depp. They got 500 grand from Elon Musk, and they got 100 grand from her. Really? Yeah. So the ACLU, who have helped her get this, it's insane. They've helped to get this op-ed in the Washington Post, and there's emails going backwards and forwards, and they're desperate to get this op-ed out within a certain time because they wanted to coincide it with Amber Heard and her starring role in Aquaman, which Johnny Depp got her that part. But the emails are basically it's vile. It's almost like, yeah, we're going to use this washed up actor and we're going to use him as a stepping stone to launch her career. This woman who can't cry on camera, an actor that can't cry when she's, by the way, while she's relaying her getting raped by a bottle, apparently. Didn't you lying slut? It's like, come on, this is insane. And it's just, this is what happens when you lie and you keep lying and you keep lying. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger to all of a sudden there's millions of people watching you lie and get caught out in lies after lies after lies.
Basically, I didn't want him to find out online that I had or was about to file, or I had already filed for divorce. I wanted him to know verbally. So I was trying to reach him through a third party to tell him. When I say reach, I'm specifically saying I would like him to know information coming from me or coming from Jerry, from me, so that he finds out about the divorce filing or my intention to do so from some other source other than TMZ, which was alerted.
You slipped up there, didn't you, Ms. Heard? You let it slip out that TMZ had been alerted to your filing of the domestic violence restraining order, didn't you?
I disagree. That's not what I'm talking about.
TMZ is the same outlet that you released the video of Mr. Depp attacking the kitchen cabinets the day before this deposition was taken, wasn't it?
I didn't do that. I don't know how to do that.
TMZ owns the copyright to that video now, doesn't it?
I have no idea what TMZ owns.
Did they pay you for that?
I never got paid for it because I had nothing to do with that.
So TMZ was just lucky in getting the inside scoop to your divorce from Mr. Depp, huh?
I have no idea. That's not my area of expertise. I wouldn't even know how to do that. And also, what does that get me? If I wanted to leak things about Johnny, I could have done that in a much more successful way, in a bigger way, for years.
Not when you were extorting him for $7 million.
And she knows, and I know she knows.
They've destroyed this man's career. Millions of dollars he's lost as a result of this Pirates of the Caribbean, and him not being in movies. And I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, Matt. I'm not saying Johnny Depp didn't hit Amber Heard, all right? But if he did,
I know exactly what you're going to say.
I'm not
yes, you'll get
the
yourself.
Sentence.
Yeah.
All of these times, all of this abuse that he's been giving her, and she was recording it all. She can't provide any of it. What she's provided makes her look like she's the abuser.
Yeah.
And it's got to the stage where it's not only it's Hollywood using him. It's the whole insidious. It's like, oh, I hope it brings it all down. You know what I mean? I really does. But I can't forgotten why I talked about that Amber Heard.
I don't know. Because it diverts.
Oh yeah, that was it. There was an expression. that Johnny Depp said that Johnny Depp had in it, where he felt like he was fighting a fight that he couldn't win. He felt like his arms were too short to box with God. Yeah. And I kind of get the feeling that's what I feel like over the last 5 years, almost like I'm trying to fight and I'm trying to throw punches and but my arms are too short and I'm in the dark. They've blindfolded me. They've made it so nobody can see me. And I do feel as if that's the situation we're in. And I feel like I need to I'll carry on doing the podcast. But with regards to me on a daily basis in the grind, there are other people in the world that do that far better than me. And also who have got the reach that I just haven't. So I'm going to try and concentrate on one
thing that I would say to you, Gordon, and this is without sort of falling into fandom. Until I lost my gold account, we called it MattMatt Gold, as basically a 2 fingers up to the people that had taken down the account that came before it, which was Ruby. I was really quite proud of the gold account. for me to get any one video that had over 50,000 views is phenomenal for my kind of audience. But I was quite proud of the videos that were on there, and I was even more proud of the comment sections. So I was a bit gutted when that account got taken down.
That's the problem I've got. That's why I'm so, I don't want to lose this account, because of all the comments and all the good work I've done, you know?
So and it wasn't until that account got taken away and we started MattMatt Olive, the first set of comments that came back were people saying thank you. Now, I'm the world's worst at accepting praise. I've been an entertainer all my life, and I very rarely ever take a bow, because it shames me. I feel ashamed receiving any kind of adulation or appreciation, which is funny for an entertainer, but it's just how I am.
Yeah.
But to see so many people come into the comment section and say thank you, just keep doing what you're doing, Matt. Thank you for coming back every time. And I think you probably underestimate how many people are hugely appreciative of what you do. And if you don't want to lose that account, start another. Announce it on the account and just start another one that you just might shoot your mouth off every now and again. But it's your decision, Gordon. And I'm a big fan of what you do on TikTok, and I'm a big fan of what you do on YouTube as well. And I think you would find you would be missed. Let me just leave it at that.
I appreciate that. Thanks. I will say my proudest moments over the last 5 years have been when I've met people at a Julian Assange event or a Palestinian march or something, that have come up to me and said, I'm here because of you. That is like, wow, I made a little bit of a dent.
Yeah.
And that's so I'm gonna I don't know what I'm going to do going forward. I'm going to definitely continue with the podcast and talking to great people like yourself. And as for anything else, I don't know. I'm going to try and maybe take some time and try and relax a little bit and try and get my words out that I really want to say. And when I say words, have them make an impact rather than just say lots of words. Do you know what I mean?
I think that sounds like a good plan. And hopefully one of those marches will be able to meet up.
Absolutely, I'd love that. There's got to be one in the coming weeks and months. Matt, is there anything?
I have a funny feeling there'll be loads.
Is there anything that you want to say? Anything that I've missed, or anything? Yeah, where can people find you? That sort of thing.
Oh, if anybody does want to try and find me, I am on TikTok. It is currently MattMatt Olive. You can find me spouting my mouth off on a daily basis while I walk the dog in the woods. I just want to say thank you to everybody who makes it possible for us to be able to have an audience of any kind, and hopefully that audience spreads the word as to what is happening with people like Julian Assange, what is happening out in Palestine, what is happening in Syria, in Pakistan, because if we don't spread what we know, little as it might be in my case, we're not doing our jobs, because if we allow it to happen, we're part of the problem.
I think that's a great way to end.
All right, it's been a pleasure.
Matt, as I call you. I love you, man. Thanks so much. We've got to do it today.
Thanks again, Gordon.